In the vast kingdom of Persia, ruled by King Ahasuerus, also known as Xerxes, life in the royal court was grand, filled with riches, feasts, and celebrations. However, the king's queen, Vashti, refused his summons to appear at a lavish banquet he threw for his guests. Outraged, King Ahasuerus decreed that she would no longer be queen. This decision left the throne beside him empty, and the search began for a new queen. Across the land, young women were brought to the palace, including a young Jewish woman named Esther. Esther was an orphan raised by her cousin Mordecai, a wise and faithful man. She was beautiful, both inside and out, with a quiet strength that caught the eye of the king. Not revealing her Jewish heritage, as advised by Mordecai, Esther eventually found favor with King Ahasuerus, who placed the royal crown on her head, making her the new queen of Persia. While Esther settled into her new role, a dark plot was brewing in the court. Haman, a high-ranking official and a close advisor to the king, grew increasingly powerful. Haman was proud and expected everyone to bow before him. But Mordecai, Esther's cousin, who worked at the king's gate, refused to bow to Haman, staying true to his Jewish beliefs that forbade such worship of any man. Haman's pride turned to hatred. Learning that Mordecai was Jewish, he devised a plan to exterminate all the Jews in Persia. With silver to back up his plan, he convinced King Ahasuerus to issue a decree. On a single day, all Jews, young and old, would be killed and their property seized. The decree struck terror among the Jews. They mourned, fasted, and sought God's mercy. Mordecai, devastated, sent a message to Esther, urging her to go to the king and plead for her people's lives. But this was no simple task. At that time, even the queen could not approach the king unsummoned without risking her life, unless he extended his golden scepter in mercy. Initially, Esther was fearful, but Mordecai's words moved her deeply. He told her, "Who knows if perhaps you were made queen for such a time as this?" In that moment, Esther understood that her position was not by chance. She sent word to Mordecai, asking all the Jews to fast and pray for 3 days. She too would fast and prepare. Then, with a heart full of faith and courage, she decided to approach the king. On the third day, Esther dressed in her royal robes and stood in the inner court. When King Ahasuerus saw her, his heart softened, and he extended the golden scepter. Relieved, Esther invited him and Haman to a private banquet. At the banquet, Esther refrained from revealing her request and instead invited the king and Haman to another feast the next day. Haman, thrilled by the special invitation, went home, but his joy quickly turned to rage when he saw Mordecai once again refusing to bow. Furious, he ordered a massive gallows built, intending to hang Mordecai the next morning. That very night, the king couldn't sleep. To pass the time, he ordered the royal chronicles to be read aloud, and he was reminded of how Mordecai had once saved his life by uncovering a plot against him. Realizing he had never rewarded Mordecai, the king called Haman and asked him how best to honor a man whom the king delights to reward. Assuming the king meant himself, Haman suggested dressing the man in royal robes, mounting him on the king's horse, and parading him through the city. To Haman's horror, the king ordered him to do exactly that for Mordecai. Bitterly, Haman obeyed, forced to honor the very man he despised. At the second banquet, King Ahasuerus asked Esther what she wished. Gathering all her courage, Esther revealed her true identity as a Jew and pleaded for her people's lives. She pointed out that a wicked plot threatened her people and that Haman was the mastermind behind it. Furious, the king stormed out into the garden. Haman, realizing his fate, threw himself at Esther's feet, begging for mercy. When the king returned, he saw Haman in this compromising position and, enraged, ordered that Haman be executed on the very gallows he had built for Mordecai. Though Haman was dead, his decree against the Jews still stood, for in Persia, royal decrees couldn't be revoked. To save her people, Esther pleaded with the king once more. In response, the king issued a new decree allowing the Jews to defend themselves against any attackers on the appointed day. When that day arrived, the Jews successfully defended themselves. Their lives were spared, and peace returned to the kingdom. Esther and Mordecai continued to be honored in the royal court, and a new feast called Purim was established to celebrate their deliverance. a holiday still celebrated by Jews around the world to this day. And so, Queen Esther's bravery, wisdom, and faith saved her people, reminding generations to come of the power of courage, faith, and standing up for what is right, even when the risks are high.